Hello, it's Hillel Neuer from UN Watch. I'm standing here in Geneva, Switzerland, right in front of the United Nations Human Rights Council, and I'd like to share a few words with you about what's happening in regard to the situation in Ukraine. As you know, in the past 24 hours, there has been a full-scale military assault by Russian forces on Ukraine, attacks across the country. Dozens of innocent people have been killed and injured. You may know that since 2014, there are already 1.5 million displaced persons in Ukraine because of Russia's military actions. Millions more, up to 5 million people may be displaced. 5 million people fear death, injury, destruction, and subjugation by the Russian occupying forces. This is a grave humanitarian situation, and we are talking about the most extreme violations of human rights that are underway and expected. So we expect the United Nations top human rights body, which is right behind me, to be taking urgent and compelling action to do whatever it can to send the message to Moscow that the international community refuses to be silent in face of its trampling of universal human rights. Sadly, the UN Human Rights Council, a 47-nation body, has done absolutely nothing so far in response to Russia's aggression. There have been 0 urgent sessions, there have been 0 resolutions, and there have been 0 commissions of inquiry. And in certain other situations, I'm not going to name them, but you can guess, in certain other situations, the UN Human Rights System, the Human Rights Council, immediately mobilizes and calls emergency sessions and adopts all kinds of resolutions and creates commissions of inquiry with large staffs and million-dollar budgets. But in this case, we're seeing absolutely nothing. This is unacceptable. This is a travesty of justice, and it's a moral outrage, and I'm standing here to call that out and for the world to know what's going on. Now look, the members of the council include the worst dictatorships. China, Russia itself is a member of the Human Rights Council, Cuba, Venezuela, Eritrea, Libya, Pakistan, Mauritania, which has slavery. The list goes on. So we know about the dictatorships on the Human Rights Council. They're going to do whatever they can to ensure it doesn't take action. And we know, sadly, that the UN Human Rights Office just yesterday announced on Twitter that Russia donated $2 million to, quote, support their human rights work. How cynical. And the UN human rights experts, there are over 50 independent UN human rights experts, and sadly, they have not issued any joint statements. In other situations, and you can guess which ones, they issue all kinds of sharp joint statements by 47 different human rights experts. So far to date, they've issued absolutely nothing. These are the special procedures, the special rapporteurs, the independent experts, the working groups. They've said absolutely nothing, no press releases on Russia. We are calling for action. Here's what we're calling for. There is a minority of democracies on the Human Rights Council, the United States, France, Germany, the Netherlands. They can convene an emergency session. They can do that today. They only need 16 countries. We're calling for an urgent session to condemn Russia's military assault on Ukraine, gross violations of human rights, international humanitarian law, to create a commission of inquiry, to hold Vladimir Putin to account under international law. And we're calling for something else. We're calling finally for the United Nations to take action, and this will be the General Assembly, to take action to expel Vladimir Putin from the Human Rights Council. Russia never should have been elected. We lobbied against it. We were with Vladimir Karamurza, who was poisoned twice by the Russian regime, and we lobbied against Russia to be elected. Sadly, no one in Europe said a single thing. Russia was elected to the Human Rights Council. They need to be expelled. Bear in mind, in early 2011, we took action. We led the campaign to expel Colonel Gaddafi's Libyan regime from the Human Rights Council, and finally that happened. Gaddafi was expelled from the Human Rights Council. We're calling for the same thing today. Under Resolution 60/251, Article 8, a country that commits gross and systematic human rights abuses can be removed from the Human Rights Council. We're calling on our democracies, as I tweeted, Secretary Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States, and the foreign ministers of the UK, France, Germany, Canada, Australia, and other democracies need to take action in the UN General Assembly. I hope my own ambassador, Bob Ray, the Canadian ambassador, will take initiative to take action to expel Russia from the Human Rights Council. It won't stop the attacks. The only way to stop a dictator who is launching a war is to have a military response. I don't know if the West is ready yet, but that's the only thing that will really stop the war. But we can do the minimum at the United Nations is to send a message, and the minimum message needs to be an emergency session against Russia, what we're calling for, and to take action to expel Russia from the Human Rights Council. Thank you very much.